we think about civic leadership and engagement, this is not just about the Urban League or AACI and many of our member organizations. This is about people being engaged and leaning in and learning. Servant leadership is important.
Welcome to the IAAQLI 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we deep dive into the transformative impact of the work being done in Indianapolis Black communities. Get ready to be inspired by the incredible projects and organizations making a real difference in the lives of Indianapolis residents. And that conversation starts right now.
Welcome to 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we take an in-depth look at the incredible work of the IAAQLI, or the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative. We are back here today with the president of the Urban League, Tony Mason, to hear more about the background of how we got here and also how we're moving forward. So welcome.
It is so good to be back on here again with you, Samantha. And so, yes, the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative, as you know, started with the announcement of a $100 million grant from the Lilly Endowment to the National Urban League. So we're going back to August of 2020. And on that momentous day in our community, to be able to announce that the endowment would support the Indianapolis Urban League, the African American Coalition, and the National Urban League to embark on work that would improve the quality of living for African Americans, where these dollars would be used to address issues in education, employment, entrepreneurship, health, and housing. And so, in essence, what we're executing is a place-based grant-making initiative, and that we would make grant awards to nonprofits in the community who are doing great work in each of these pillars. Now, as you know, Samantha, our work has been informed with input from everyone from community leaders to everyday residents in this community, and even our young people. So that way, the 37 priorities that we've established for the initiative, they have been informed and shaped with input from everyday citizens in this community. Also, with support and knowledge and information from great community partners, thought leaders, and experts in the community that do this work as well.
So I think you mentioned this goes all the way back to 2020. So now that we're 5 years into this thing, I can't believe it's already 5 years from 2020. But 5 years into this thing, what work do you think the Urban League did to really build up and set this kind of initiative up for success?
So really, it starts with putting together a great team. As you know, our co-director is Willis Bright, our director of operations, Dr. Carlin Tishner, Danica Thomas, Alicia Baird. They play key roles in our work as well. And so since the beginning, and as you said, 5 years have passed by real fast.
Yeah.
But we're pleased to share that we've awarded nearly $60 million in grants to over 100 nonprofits in the community. And again, they're all doing work in the spaces as shared before: entrepreneurship, employment, health, housing, education, and also the sixth pillar being civic engagement and leadership development. Because we know that we've got to continue to lean into and to help develop our next generation of leaders while also building capacity amongst our organizations. Because this work is going to be ongoing for quite some time. This grant, if anything, is catalytic in nature and should just be the beginning. You can't address all of the challenges and issues facing our community and our people with just $100 million. Yes, it's a lot of money, and it's enough to start the work. But of course, now as we move forward, we will have to leverage partnerships, raise more dollars, and encourage other foundations and entities to lean in on this work as well.
And we know that investments like these don't happen overnight. So what really made this the right time for it?
I think we had a confluence of issues back in 2020, everything from the onset of the pandemic to the fallout from George Floyd, and just the notion in this community and the understanding that our community has been void of investment for decades. Yes. Whether it be the dollars necessary to ensure that our educational institutions and our schools are thriving, are successful, whether it's lack of investment in affordable workforce housing. This community has a huge challenge in that space when we think about the needs in early learning and child care, access to better jobs with good wages and benefits. And the list of challenges go on and on. We didn't get here overnight, and we won't solve all of the problems overnight as well. But we know that this is a good start. And the fact that we're encouraging organizations to lean in and to do this work, and in many instances, do it in partnership with other community organizations. So it's also strengthening the nonprofit ecosystem, if you will, along the way.
Yeah, I think, like we talked about this, I think we touched on this before, but one of the things that I really like about the 6 pillars and the areas that you're funding, they're not really like these clean lines because they're things that are impacting people all at once, right? Yes. And so as we're empowering, as you're empowering tenants' rights initiatives, yes, right, that's also empowering future civic leaders. Right, yes, giving them opportunities to grow and become better advocates and things like that. So how do you guys, when you guys do go to like separate these things and put them in columns and stuff, like how do you guys think about that? Like how do you deal with that overlap?
Well, I do think we attempt to speak to that in some instances in some of our reports, if you will. But I think it's important for everyone to understand the interconnectedness with all of this work. When you think about economic empowerment, you know, if you don't have a job or you earn great wages, you can't afford quality housing.
Right.
You can't afford quality health care. It likely means that you may be living in a neighborhood where maybe there's an underperforming school that is under-resourced.
Yeah.
And so we can go on and on about how all of these things connect. And then we think about civic leadership and engagement. You know, this is not just about the Urban League or AACI and many of our member organizations. This is about people being engaged and leaning in and learning. Servant leadership is important. Yes. And oftentimes it's something that goes terribly underappreciated. Yes. But we need people to be prepared to step in. And who's going to be the next leader of the Urban League? Who's going to be the next leader of the African American Coalition or the over 100 grantee organizations that are benefiting from the Quality of Life Initiative? The work will certainly have to carry on. And
yeah,
so as long as we come to recognize that and understand that it's all a part of the challenges that we face and how if we're going to strengthen, you know, our community and this nonprofit ecosystem that is so important to helping so many people, and particularly in this moment now with all of the legislative upheaval, mm-hmm, the executive orders at the federal level, yeah, the state level, and all of the politics that we see taking place with attacks against DEI, it is critical now more than ever that we all lean in and we do our part to get, yeah, this work done.
Absolutely. I think we struggle with not planning for who comes next in our community, especially a lot, yes, right? And in our organizations, churches, things like that. So I'm so grateful that people are thinking about the future. Thank you so
yes,
much. So coming up next, we will have Willis and Carlin back to talk more about the IAAQLI initiative and what it's done and what it's going to do.
Coming up next on the 6 Pillars in Action podcast, we'll continue our conversation with IAAQLI leaders. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and visit the IAAQLI website to learn more about the incredible work being done and how you can get involved.
Welcome back to 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we're taking an in-depth look at the IAAQLI. We are back here with Carlin and Willis. Welcome, fellas.
Thank you.
Today we've been talking about or leading up to the final round, but before we get there, I want to talk about just a little bit of a recap of building up to here, right? So we heard some of the numbers from Tony, who was here before, but also to you all, what's behind those numbers? Like, what do those numbers mean? We keep saying 60 million over 100 organizations, but what's behind that? What do you think that means?
Yeah.
What it means is that a lot of organizations that are doing very good work in our community, helping people find jobs, helping children get prepared for school, helping young people learn how to lead organizations, are having resources to be able to do that. For some of the organizations, they have not in the past been able to garner resources to do their work or sufficient resources to do that. So what those numbers mean is that some groups have been able to go deeper into their work as well as to be able to do it in a way that allows them to make an impact on the lives of the young people or the adults that they're working with.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. Did you
Yeah,
have
I'll just share. I think what the numbers mean is a set of stories about collective impact.
Yeah.
This was an opportunity for organizations who have been doing great work, who've been underfunded, as Willis said, but also organizations who really need an opportunity to broadcast their impact in ways that they haven't had the opportunity to do so. And so it's really around collective storytelling, like what can focused energy and focused momentum and focused funding do to be catalytic for the benefit of local community across the city. And hopefully we've been able to start generating stories that demonstrate the outcome of those numbers so that real lives can be demonstrated by the impact of those numeric figures.
Yeah.
And part of that story is that they are a trusted entity in the community that can really do something. To have your name listed as an IAAQLI grant recipient says to the community, this is an organization that can be trusted to do some quality work. And for some, this is their first level of recognition. Now, there's some organizations that have been around for quite a while, but it for them might be that they have the dexterity to do some different kind of work than maybe they have done in the past.
I love, because I was going to ask about sustainability, and you're kind of talking about that, like giving them that kind of stamp of approval also helps them to sustain and secure future funding opportunities as well, because they've proven themselves in that way.
Yeah, I think there's a practical example, and I don't think the average person knows that this is what happens in philanthropic spaces. Other philanthropic organizations will ask us, give us a list of those you fund and tell us about the projects that they're engaged in. But they also ask, give us a list of those who you've turned down. Why did you turn them down? And if they had more to do what they were hoping to do, what would that look like, and what would make you more interested in their project? So when organizations say, I'm not applying, well, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not in the conversation at all. But even if you receive a declination, you're in the dialogue, and you have an opportunity to be seen by other organizations for potential future opportunities.
Yeah.
And in addition to giving people lists of those that we've supported or not, we have also gone to talk to funders groups to share in either their affinity areas such as education or overall what we are doing, what groups that we are supporting, so that it gives the organizations a sense that they now can be more visible within the larger funder world. Hopefully many of them will be able to be picked up on by those organizations as potential grantees, because this is a temporary initiative. This is a 5-year window of time in history. It will go away. And if contacts are not made by some organizations, if funding is not picked up on, the things that we've helped initiate or support may not be funded in the future if people have not been able to make connections, or if funders don't see that the work that we've supported has been of a quality that would fit with their ongoing grant agenda.
Yeah, yeah. I think what you mentioned before about, like, there was some smaller organizations, maybe this is their first time with this kind of grant, and some larger ones that have been stables for a long time. Do you guys know, like, estimation wise, like, how has that been? Has it been a lot of new organizations, or has it been heavier on the other end?
Yeah, I would say it's probably about 30% of new emerging organizations,
Oh,
30,
that's great.
33%. So 1/3. Naturally, in our first round, we focused on organizations who we knew could demonstrate true impact immediately to some larger degree. And those were organizations that were considered staples in the community to a large degree. But we've always been intentional about opening the door for new and emerging organizations. Maybe their dollar figure was a lot less than might be in comparison to other organizations that are staples, but it was an opportunity nonetheless.
Yeah, and was there at the beginning, especially, was there more opportunities for like fiscal sponsors, things like that at the start?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you bring that up, because organizations don't always think about identifying a fiscal sponsor to help them grow and develop their infrastructure and capacity to demonstrate their ability to manage a grant. So we did allow for a significant amount of organizations to have fiscal sponsors. We see that as a collaboration approach,
Yeah.
right? And eventually the organization that's smaller can then become a fiscal agent for someone else once they learn how to self-manage and self-govern.
And quite frankly, strategically, that is a way for an organization to grow, because every organization's not ready to jump out on Front Street.
Right.
And so if they can be incubated within a larger organization till the point that they are ready to go out on their own and have the experience to be able to do so, and the contacts with the funder world, it's a great way for them to grow and then go out as a known. Because sometimes if you just jump out and you send a proposal to a foundation or to a corporation, even for a sponsorship, and no one knows you, there's less likelihood that they're going to be responsive than if you've been involved with someone they do know, and that entity then can vouch for you. You're in a much better position to be supported independently.
So have you, in that process, because I wanted to give folks a little more information on that piece, because I think a lot of smaller organizations, and I can speak from experience, sometimes there's a lack of trust with some of the bigger organizations, regardless of maybe like historical context or things like that. But have you guys helped facilitate relationships with maybe smaller organizations and larger ones that could sponsor?
Yeah, one previous podcast you asked what makes us different, and that's one of the things that I think makes us different is we try. I mean, our capacity is not great, right? We've intentionally been small and numbered so that most of the dollars flows out. But we've tried to make intentional relationship connections between organizations large and small so that we could create that mechanism of support. And we have several examples of that, and we continue to try to do that. But another way we've done that is by creating space for people to get to know one another, sponsored by our initiative, so that those natural relationships could hopefully grow by osmosis, but in the context of a space that we've created, which feels more intentional than just assuming folks just get to know each other randomly.
Yeah.
And when we have had technical assistance training days, we always have groups identify themselves and talk a little bit about what they're doing. During the breaks, you can see people gravitating towards one another. Oh, I didn't know you were doing that. And some things may evolve out of that. But I think you allude to something that is a reality. Who do you trust?
Yeah.
And often if one wants to husband one's own idea to the point that the rest of the world doesn't get to see it because you think someone might want to steal your particular idea, well, quite frankly, that may not be the best strategy, because the community wants to build on what it already knows rather than assume that you start just where somebody's particular interest might be. So most funding entities are going to say, who have you talked to in the world who's doing what you are trying to do, and how does your stuff compare to what's already out there? So I think it's a pretty good idea if you've got an idea that you think's the best thing since chocolate candy to go out and see if anybody else is doing a similar thing and how what you're doing comparatively fits into the overall community ecology of problem solving around that issue area.
Yeah. I think somebody super wise told me one time, is it most important that it gets done or that you do it? You know? And most times, like 99% of the time, it's that it gets done, right? And what's most important is that our community gets it. So
Agreed.
We will be back in just a moment with Willis and Carlin, and we will talk about the final round.
Coming up next on the Six Pillars in Action podcast, we'll continue our conversation with IAAQLI leaders. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and visit the IAAQLI website to learn more about the incredible work being done and how you can get involved.
Welcome back to Six Pillars in Action. We are back with Carlin and Willis to talk about the final round, because everybody and their mama has been asking about the final round, right? So with this round, first of all, we know there will be some differences, or the process has evolved. So why has it needed to evolve?
Well, the reason that the final round is being structured as it is because it is the final round.
Okay.
We have had an opportunity over the last 5 years, and I think sometimes people forget we've been around that amount of time. It is now time for us to begin to close shop. And in closing shop, we have had the opportunity to look back over the grants that we have made, the over 140 grants that we have made, to see what kind of work those grants have been able to do, to see how the $60+ million that's been invested in the community, how has that been invested, and what do we know at this point has been achieved. We don't know everything because we still have some projects that are still in action, and we have not done a full evaluation of the work. But we at least have some indication of what it is that we've been able to seed, what we've been able to move along, and even what we've been able to conclude. So as a result, we see this last round of our ability to put out about $29 million as an opportunity to do some capstoning, to be able to go deeper into some areas, as well as to recognize that there may be some emerging things that have occurred that we at least have to give some attention to before we close shop. So this is both an exciting time for us, but it also is a time where we have to have greater intentionality about what it is we do, because this is the piece that will help create any legacy that the initiative might have.
I love that you guys are putting attention to emerging things too, even though you're saying like this is our last round, we're on our way out of here. But I love that you're still paying attention to emerging things. I think that still really shows you all's passion and intentionality throughout this whole process, that even though this is the last round, we still want to make sure that new things that are coming are being addressed.
Well, yes, and we have to have some care in doing something that is emerging. Just because it is piquing the consciousness of the community doesn't mean that it hasn't been around,
right,
and that there aren't people that have been doing some work already. And we clearly don't want to start something new that may not be able to get traction.
Yeah.
Because that's unfortunately a history of too many grant efforts. They've started something, they're the only ones that fund it, they get people's hopes and dreams up, and then they come crashing down because nothing else. So yes, we want to be aware of the emerging, see what we can find to connect it to that may be related, so that there is some chance that it can continue to further develop over time, or that the things that we support are able to touch it, but do it in a way that connects it to some future possibilities.
That's great. So, Carlin, we're here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about round 5. Let's talk about how this process has evolved. What can people expect?
Yeah, it certainly feels like round 5 because we've been doing it a lot of times. And as we explain this 3-pronged process, it's going to feel like several rounds in one. But technically, we are in round 4, and we're talking about it from a 3-pronged approach. And before I get into the details of it, I just want to share that I think any organization may naturally say, okay, this is my last opportunity. And while it feels that way in some cases for this initiative, our goal has always been to set the stage for future opportunities beyond us. And I think it's important to say that. So it is the last for this iteration, but it is not the last. We do not believe. And the next thing I'll say is when we think about kind of the social determinants of health, our goal has always been to really be intentional about addressing those primary issues within the Black community in this city. And it's important to note that because to Willis's earlier point, if we respond to every single contextual reality, then we can't be laser focused and sharp on the issues that we said we would address directly. Even if they align or connected, they're not exactly precisely what we said we would do. And so we wanted to be clearer about what we said we would do, and in this last round be intentional about how we structure it to get at those social determinants of health, to tell that larger story. With that in mind, we're going to do essentially 2 invitational aspects to this work and 1 general aspect. The 2 invitationals will be bookends, so we'll have a set of grantees that we have been courting in the traditional sense. And the traditional sense means we've been working with them for 9-10 months to put together a plan in response to a white paper that's addressing one of those social determinants of health that we know is critical, contextually and long term. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've been working on since 2024, probably in March. And that will be a set of organizations that will receive our initial funding in this first part of our last round. And then the next will be an open round across all 6 pillars that opens the door for organizations that are hoping to have their first investment or organizations that would like a reinvestment. Some organizations might say, can we get more funding if we've been funded before? Yes. Yes, especially if you've demonstrated impact in your previous work. And if you are still in your current grants, you still have the opportunity for the funding in the general round. And then our last investment, third part of the prong, will be another set of invitationals. If I am in the general round, I'd say, man, why am I not a part of the invitational? And it's really back to that laser-focused, intentional desire for us to make the impact that we have to be able to tell a story about. And if we fail at that, then we're not stewards over this fund. But again, our goal is to set the tone for future investment, co-investment, and we believe that by doing it this way, we have the best chance to have sustainable fund for this work.
I would say, especially about the invitational grants, we hope that there will be some storylines to those that will allow us to go out and talk to public funders, foundations, as well as the general public, and let that work be known more broadly. So all throughout the initiative, we have done more than made grants to organizations. We have met with various groups in the community. We have done publicity through our website. We're doing work through the organization that you're associated with, so that there are multiple entities in the community, both specialized and general, that have some knowledge about the work. And we always try to invite people to support the organizations that we have been making grants to, either as a volunteer or a private donation, or in other ways that they may be able to even partner with them. So this has been more than just a grant program. It's been a program that has tried to use all the avenues of engagement that we can to tell a broad story. And in the final round, we want to tell some very specific stories that may be related to a sector or may be related to a particular issue.
So with this 3-pronged process, right, you said the first would be an invitational, but this is folks that you're already working with?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
That's
okay.
Right. That's
okay.
right. And the same would be true for the third prong, which is another invitational. Again, traditional philanthropy requires that a program officer would be engaging with a grantee or potential grantee over the period of time to make a case for the proposed idea. And so we took that approach this time a bit more intentionally with the two parts of the prong. And so I think timeline is important to talk about. So Q1 is our goal for that first prong with the invitational. Q2, early on Q2 will be our goal for the general, and then subsequently thereafter, and maybe really overlapping to some degree, the third prong, which would be another invitational. And to divide out the numbers, I'll be general, but if there's 29 million remaining, our goal would be to split it up across three prongs around 30%, 33%, give or take, or plus or minus 5%. So if you're not a mathematician, basically
Roughly
you're saying
10 million.
about $10 million in each of those categories.
Yeah, and I think I misspoke. I said fifth round, but it's fourth
I
round.
got you. That's why I was
5
helping. You
years.
good. You
I just
good.
wanted to
You
clarify
good.
that, just so that I don't
Yeah,
confuse
yeah.
nobody. Fourth round. Okay. So for that last invitational too. So those are people when you say already working with, like they know they'll be a part of this invitational. So if they don't know already, they probably weren't a part of it.
It's a great question,
Yeah.
right? So for those who are in that first prong, they know already.
Okay.
For those who are in
yes.
the third, we're having conversations
Okay.
as we speak. No commitments have been made at this point.
Okay.
And even for those in the first and third, because there's been a lot of work directly with our team to validate our perception, their proposals will still undergo the same review process that all proposals go through, where 3 independent judges look at and evaluate the quality of that proposal and how much it adheres to the expectations and to the requirements of the request for proposals. So just because we've been working with them a long time, that does not still guarantee that they will be recommended to the National Urban League, which will make the final decision for a grant, because we think that independent eyes might see some things that we would have missed.
Yeah.
So what do we care about? Outcomes.
Yeah.
We care about stewardship, and we care about the ability to tell the story effectively. And that is part of why we've approached it this way, because this last round has to be completely successful.
Yeah. So, and for the open round, Q2, do we have a rough date on that?
Yeah, well, you'd love that, wouldn't you?
I would
Yeah.
love.
The nature of philanthropy is that it's not easy to set hard, fast numbers. And because we're complicated by the fact that we have this larger partnership with the National Urban League, I can't suggest that date at this point.
Okay.
But know that if you're curious, our website is available. That's where we put our updates immediately.
Which is?
IAAQLI.org.
Oh, come on, IAAQLI.org. So that's where they should connect with to follow up for more information, to find out more, especially about this open round. I'm assuming the invitational will continue to be
Sure.
Directly between you all and the organizations you intend to give that opportunity to. Just the opportunity to. Yes, the opportunity to.
That's right.
Well,
The request for proposals will be on the website.
thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of the IAAQLI podcast, which is 6 Pillars in Action podcast. You can follow us on social media, especially on Facebook and Instagram. Our Instagram is at IAAQLI, Facebook is IAAQLI, and YouTube is also IAAQLI. Look out for the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in to the 6 Pillars in Action podcast, where we shine the light on the work transforming the lives of African American residents across Indianapolis. We're excited to announce that the 4th and final round of funding from the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative is launching soon, with $29 million in new investments available for community-driven change. Mark your calendars and join us live on Facebook and YouTube on Monday, July 7th at 2:30 p.m. to get all of the key details about eligibility, the application process, and what's next for this historic initiative. And stay tuned for the upcoming IAAQLI documentary, celebrating the people, the partnerships, and the powerful impact behind this bold investment in our communities. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on July 7th.